This video contains sensitive content relating to oppression of the Nazi parties. I in no way endorse the actions/ideologies of said party. All praise of the video is directed towards the game quality produced by Machine Games. Thank you and I hope you enjoy. The Wolfenstein series might just be the most thrown to the side game series I've ever heard of. The games are based in an alternate history where the Nazis have won World War II. The Wolfenstein games were released in the early 90s and 2000s, and have since been rebooted, and from 2014 onwards there have been new games in the franchise. The first rebooted game, Wolfenstein The New Order, was released in 2014, and was very popular around the time of its release. Despite all the controversy of having Nazi imagery and basically showing a future where the Nazis have won, the game was well received by critics and gamers alike. It has an interesting story, a brutal setting, and of course a lot of violence. The game was followed by a prequel, The Old Blood, which was released in 2015, and then an actual sequel, The New Colossus, which was released in 2017. Both of these were extremely hyped up, and especially The Old Colossus was a massive step up from its two previous games. Then you have Youngblood. We don't talk about Youngblood. This game didn't live up to the amazing reception of the previous games, and for now, the past 3 years we haven't heard anything about a new entry into the Wolfenstein series. What happened? Did the reboots help revive this game series? And what did people find so wrong with Youngblood? In this video, I'll be answering all of those questions, so stay tuned for this video on Wolfenstein, the most overlooked gaming franchise. The history of the games start in 1981 with the release of Castle Wolfenstein, developed for the Apple II house computer. 3 years later, Beyond Castle Wolfenstein was released, and then came one of the biggest games, revolution-wise, for all modern FPS games, Wolfenstein 3D. It was one of the first original first-person shooters and is considered the grandfather of modern FPS titles, as it was the first game to use a 3D environment for the player to interact and traverse between. This was a massive achievement and basically started the 3D animation and 3D environment games that followed during the mid to late 90s. Return to Castle Wolfenstein was another massive step for the games, introducing 3D models and a much more detailed game than any of the previous titles. Also behind the scenes between the previous game and this one, Activision acquired the rights to publish. Then, in 2003, Wolfenstein Enemy Territory, and finally, Wolfenstein 2009. This was the final entry into the series, which unfortunately basically buried it. The game was held back due to the same repetitive nature that was the modern era of shooters being released yearly, like the Call of Duties and other shooters alike. Unfortunately, due to bad sales, that being only 100,000 sold in the first month, Activision laid off employees, and ever since the game hasn't been available to buy on Xbox Live or the PlayStation Store. But many years later, this game is being held in a much kinder light compared to the more contemporary games like Call of Duty. Then, 4 years later, in 2013, Bethesda Softworks released a trailer to E3, titled Wolfenstein The New Order. They also released several alternate history trailers. This generated so much hype that when the game was released in May of 2014, it sold over 400,000 units. And, at the moment, I have not been able to find a solid number for the sales, but overall this game was very well received by gamers and critics. It also brought a brand new audience to the genre. The success of this game set up the foundations for the next installment. This game was a prequel to The New Order, and helped tie up references and characters that were brought up in this game.
There you go. I have a secret trick. Count to 4. Inhale. Count to 4. Exhale. You got it. You should try it.
My eyes are watering, and I think I'm gonna be sick. Is this normal?
It's just nerves. Let me teach you a trick. Inhale. Count to 4. Exhale. Count to 4. All there is to it.
Well, having our ass tanned by some Nazi mutant fucking Frankenstein.
Wolfenstein the Old Blood was released in 2015, roughly a year after 2014's The New Order. Like I mentioned before, it's a prequel, and this game tried to tie into the supernatural aspect of the previous Wolfenstein games, like Wolfenstein released in 2008. This game focused on supernatural enemies such as zombies, which are created from a type of mystical gas released and a giant monster called the Monstrosity. Unfortunately, this game's supernatural elements sort of ruin the game's realism. And before you say, this game is based in an alternate history where anything can happen, while you're right there, the sort of realism that they went for in the previous game and in the new Colossus was that the Nazis had impressive technology which allowed for their one-up over the Allies, resulting in them winning the war. But in this game, we do get Nazi zombies, which is a very niche, and not a game mode which created a complex lore by a similar game franchise. But the main point is, as good of a game as it is with its gameplay and setting, the supernatural element just didn't fit well with the title. Aside from that, the game sold well. It also ties directly into the New Order being set right before the first mission of the game.
Eyes open, Blazkowicz. You keep a lookout. I need to go.
Then, 2 years later, a trailer was shown at E3 2016 of a sequel to the 2014 release. This game, called Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus. It was released in 2017, but even before it was released, this game was unfortunately released alongside current controversy. The game adopted a slogan, "Make America Nazi-Free Again," which was based on the infamous slogan of Donald Trump, "Make America Great Again." Another slogan was "Not My America," which was used by people who were against Trump's presidency. This in turn made the game popular and drew positive attention, but was heavily criticized by the Trump supporters who said the advertisements of the game unfairly associate them with Nazis. It's a video game. Anyway, the game was also censored in Germany, but that goes without saying, until 2019, where the game was given an exception and an uncensored version was released. After all the controversy, the game was met with really positive reviews, and the game was given ratings even higher than the New Order. The game has been looked back as a great shooter, as a similar game came out at the same time, Doom, which was released the year before. And after playing both games for a considerable amount of time, I can see and feel the similarities. Both are fast-paced action games with great music, fantastic level design, not to forget the Easter eggs and secrets littered throughout the levels. I think both games profit off of each other, as the games were both by Bethesda Softworks. This game was really well executed and still holds up today. It even released 3 separate DLCs, which we will never talk about. And finally, in 2018, at E3, Wolfenstein Youngblood was announced. The game was then released in 2019 and seemed almost identical to the previous couple of games in its gameplay and design. Although the game decided to do something different with having some RPG elements implemented. This is where the game starts to fail to live up to its predecessors. The stealth in previous games felt really good, takedowns felt amazing and super gory, and now it's all level based. You can't really fight and hold your own against enemies of a higher level, and most not if not all stealth attempts end with enemies being alerted and stealth ruined. This game was however praised for its combat, an attempt at something different. Unfortunately, the sales did not show that, and ever since there's been no announcement of any other Wolfenstein games. You know what I'm going to say already. This video will spoil these games. I will also be giving my opinion on these games, and if you disagree, then that's completely fine. This is my opinion, and I'll be explaining and informing why I have these feelings on these games. So without further ado, let's begin. The series begins in Wolfenstein the Old Blood. The end of World War II is rapidly approaching. The Nazis have the upper hand due to their advancements in technology, and the Allies need to topple this advancement by taking out Deathshead, who is the head of the German Allied forces and the head researcher of the SS Special Projects Division. William Joseph Blazkowicz, or also known as BJ, is tasked with finding a folder which contains the location of Deathshead's compound. He successfully gets into Castle Wolfenstein alongside his friend Richard Wesley. They enter an office trying to find a safe with the folder, but instead are ambushed and a firefight breaks out. As they try to escape, they are captured by Rudy Jaeger, who is the second in command next to this game's main antagonist, Helga von Schnaps.
God damn it, Blazkowicz. You done messed up now.
BJ is placed into the castle prison, but he manages to escape, and on his way to find Wesley, he finds that Helga has located a crypt containing artifacts which relate to King Otto of the Holy Roman Empire. After finding Wesley, BJ gets knocked out by Rudy and wakes to find Wesley being eaten by Greta, who is Rudy's dog. BJ manages to survive the torture and escape and kill Greta.
Killed your fucking dog, Rudy.
Realizing that he is outnumbered, he fights his way to the castle entrance and successfully escapes Castle Wolfenstein. BJ then manages to make it to the rendezvous in the neighbouring town, Panderborn. After making contact with his team, which consists of Kessler and Annette, the tavern is shot up. BJ holds off against the Nazis. After surviving that, Rudy appears in heavy armour and starts to attack BJ, but Rudy wasn't prepared for the might that is BJ's forearm size and loses the fight. BJ then heads to Wolfsburg to follow Helga and find out what she has found in the crypt. During his vacation around, he meets Pippa, who is an undercover nurse. BJ then heads towards a tavern where Helga is located. BJ then tries his hitman skills, poses as a waiter, finds the folder, but as he's about to escape, Helga interrogates him because BJ's German is as good as Lieutenant Aldo Rain's Italian.
Und?
Köstlich.
Buongiorno.
He is found out and is about to be shot when a massive earthquake hits. This happens because of Helga's squad blowing up the crypt entrance. This creates a strange chemical gas which reanimates the dead.
Jesus Christ.
BJ fights his way back to Pippa, who is unfortunately killed by the Nazis she has killed.
Hello.
BJ searches Wolfsburg for his team, who he finds, but they are split up and you have to decide which one to save. Oh my god, it's like every other game I've talked about. But once you have made the choice to save one of them, you hijack a prototype construction mech and proceed to kill your way to the graveyard. This game went from a standard shooter to a horror game fast, and I can say I did get jump scared several times. Fighting his way through the graveyard and the old church, BJ faces off against Nazis and Nazi zombies. BJ reaches the inner sanctum, where he is once again captured by Helga. She reveals her plan to unearth King Otto's secret, which has been hidden for centuries. This secret was a giant monster. It attacks Helga, kills her second officer, BJ, being the Chad he is, fights monsters and zombies. And he manages to kill the monster, faces Helga, and kills her. Next to her corpse is the folder, which BJ has been searching for. But due to the monster dying, rubble comes down and knocks out BJ. He is then woken up by Fergus Reed.
Here he is.
Fergus.
Come on, give me a hand, you lazy bastard. How's the head, Blazkowicz?
How'd you find me?
We got a distress call from Pippa. We found her body.
They got Wesley too, Fergus.
Bloody hell.
Come on, miss. We have to get you out of here.
Yeah, listen, Blazko. We can't change what happened. You did a hell of a job finding that folder. Which means we've got the location of Death's Head's compound. Eh? We bloody got it. Can you believe it?
The game ends with Reed and BJ heading to the RAF Kinloss in Scotland as they make their final preparations for the assault on Death's Head compound, leading right into the events of BJ and Fergus start their raid on Death's Head compound with the RAF and the USAAF, and the attack goes sideways instantly. They suffer massive casualties. They survive and make it to the beach of Death's Head's compound. They fight their way and survive the beach massacre, and start to grapple their way up the wall. BJ and his crew make their way through the castle with the goal of killing William Strauss, who is also known as Death's Head, until they get trapped and captured by Death's Head. Also, from now on, Death's Head will just be referred to as DH to save time. He then forces BJ to choose between Wyatt or Fergus Reed. One will survive and the other will be killed.
Which one of these two varieties would best support my research? I have inadequate room for samples. Should you decline my opinion, I shall have to put a scalpel to both of them and we'll be here all day. I'll make matters simple. All you need to do is look to the one you would have me dissect.
After making this choice, the game places you in one of two timelines, either the Wyatt timeline if you save him, or the Fergus timeline. This alters the game slightly by having different cutscenes and different in-game minigames. BJ and who you choose to survive escape the compound, but in an explosion, BJ suffers extreme brain damage and is left to drift at sea. until he is saved by a fisherman. With BJ's loss, the Allied attack on DH's compound ends in defeat, and the last chance to turn the war around dies. 14 years pass. During this time, an atomic bomb is dropped on New York, instantly killing 200,000 people, resulting in the United States surrendering to the Nazis. This marks the end of World War II. You can also learn of more countries falling during this time by reading news clippings around the levels and in the headquarters. During this time, BJ recovers with the help of Anya, a Polish nurse. He gets nursed back to health and witnesses the Nazis massacre Anya's family.
Nazi scum. Anya, where'd they take you?
BJ fights back and saves Anya. BJ then learns about the fall of the US and how the world is now under the control of the Nazis. He then plans to save some of the members of the resistance who are now in Eisenwald prison, located in Berlin. On the way to Berlin with Anya, after clearing a checkpoint, they get on a train. BJ unknowingly meets the game's main antagonist, Irene Engel, a high-ranking Nazi officer who is the commander of the Belizea labor camp and chief of police. After unwillingly participating in an Aryan test, BJ and Anya make it to Berlin. Once there, BJ then sneaks onto a prison transport vehicle and makes it into Eisenwald.
Steel. Stone. Concrete for miles. I wonder if there's anything in this world worth saving. Desolation. Tyranny. Enemy of endless might. I'm wondering if I have any friends left standing. Comes down to it, I'll fight alone. But I promise you this. Friends, if this is where they're keeping you, I will find you and set you free.
After clearing out some of the guards, BJ finds and saves the resistance members, and one of them was who you saved. In my case, it was Fergus. After fighting through the prison, BJ and Fergus escape, and return to the Resistance's main base located in the center of Berlin. They then hatch a plan to steal some prototype helicopter aircrafts located in the London Nautica facility.
This big fucking disgrace of a building is a London Nautica. This used to be downtown London. Used to be fighting in the streets over here. I mean, furious, unrelenting resistance. And then the Nazis brought in a London Monitor and everything went to shit from there. They just do whatsoever they please now. They just fucking leveled everything and erected this fucking monstrosity. It's a top Nazi research facility, this is. Aviation, space, all kinds of evil shit transpiring. Caroline and the other pilots should be over the radio tower by now, you see it. Anya's operating the radio back in Berlin. You can reach him using this. This is where you get off. So long, Blazkowicz. You make this count, all right?
After that subtle entrance, BJ fights his way through the facility. After finding a research room and borrowing a Laserkraftwerk, BJ secures the hangar where the aircrafts are located. After doing what BJ does best, the aircrafts are secured and they all escape. Anya then finds a link to someone who is part of Youngblood, which is a highly intelligent research team who developed advanced technology which the Nazis stole and used to win the war. BJ goes undercover and gets placed in the Balisian labor camp to find Set Roth. After making contact, Set needs a battery to be able to take control of a machine. After sneaking your way through the prison, you find the battery.
Ein Saboteur! Hier, den erkenne ich von der Selektion wieder.
Nein, noch davor, Bobby. Der Nachtzug.
Meine Güte, ja, du hast recht. Zu einem Abzeichensurteil ist ein Amerikaner und ein Anarchist, hm?
Ein Amerikaner? Gut. Sofortige Liquidierung von ihm und allen Insassen von Block 4. Sollte eine eindrückliche Warnung sein für all die Schweine, die an einen Aufstand gedacht haben. Alarmiert sie an Faust.
Jawohl, Lagerkommandant. Dabei muss ich aber nicht dabei sein, oder? Der Gestank dieses Ortes. Nee.
Mach, was du willst. What were you thinking, you stupid idiot? Weitermachen, Herr Faust!
You have it!
You down. At the end of the earth I will fight. Your skin charred, your fats rendered, your kind exterminated. At the end I will feed your flesh to the furnace.
Take a seat, big man. Now we flee everyone. Understand? We return to the camp. Open the garage door, steal a vehicle, and crash through the gate. Let's go.
Then an awesome sequence happens, where BJ controls a massive machine which he uses to break out of the prison. After speaking with Set Roth, he then tells you that a Youngblood base is located in the Atlantic Ocean, and in order to get there, they need a U-boat. BJ is then tasked with going into the Berlin catacombs to sabotage Nazi weapons in the main munitions stockpile. After swimming, sneaking and fighting, BJ steals a train loaded with missiles and weapons. They then hatch the plan to steal a Nazi U-boat by placing BJ in a torpedo, which would then be loaded onto the U-boat. Once under our control, we travel to the Atlantic and make our way into Youngblood's base. On the swim down, Fergus informs us that the overall plan is for us to launch a nuclear weapon at DH's compound, completely destroying any and all prototypes of technology, and that the nuclear launch codes are kept in the Nazi lunar base, located on the moon. After taking a piece of Youngblood technology, BJ uses it to, well, just watch. After derailing a train, BJ finds his way to the train car, where the Nazi lunar commander is located. After stealing his uniform, BJ then heads to the moon. Once on the moon, he sneaks, fights and knives his way around and locates the lunar war room, steals the nuclear launch codes, and that seems to alert everyone on the whole base. So BJ once again fights his way out, He then borrows a space shuttle and uses it to fly back to the London Nautica. He makes a spectacular landing, and then fights his way through the building until he faces off against the London Monitor, a massive piece of Nazi technology which polices the city of London. After dealing with that boss fight, BJ rushes back to the hideout as the Nazis had found them. BJ defends and rescues some members of the resistance, but then learns that Anya and the others have been captured by Irene Engel and sent to DH's compound. BJ and the others head to the U-boat and plan a way to save the rest of the gang, and while they're there, kill Deathshead. They plan to launch the same weapon that they used to derail a train on the main wall of DH's compound. With the wall completely gone, BJ fights his way through the compound, leaving a trail of destruction behind him. He then makes his way to DH's research room, but while making his way through the room, he is ambushed and kills Booby, who is this guy. BJ rescues the other resistance members, but gets separated when an elevator breaks and sends BJ face to face with Deathshead.
We'll get you out of there. We'll go somewhere. I believe there are still places on this earth where people can go and live happy.
I believe so too. Not for me and for you.
What are you doing in there? An old friend come to visit? I haven't had a visitor like you in a long time.
Meeting him gives BJ flashbacks to his decision at the start of the game and shows what actually happens to your victim. Depending on who you choose to save, the other person's brain will be placed into a terrifying machine. BJ survives the attack, finds some EMP grenades which allow him to disable the machine and save his long-lost friend.
Wyatt, you in there?
Captain, I tried. So sorry I shouted you. I have no control over my actions. Cannot live like this. You have to put an end to it.
Private, it was an honor to serve by your side.
DH then appears in his massive mechanical walker which harnesses the power from two blimps near the compound. BJ destroys both those blimps with a convenient anti-material launcher right there.
day is done, I will have you at the end of my blade and force your surrender.
And then faces Death's Head in a type of furnace area, and I must say this part was the most difficult on the difficulty I'm playing, I Am Death Incarnate, which is the second hardest difficulty. After a while, BJ wins against impossible odds for like the 20th time.
I will never kneel to you. Fine. I will gut you standing.
BJ confronts and stabs DH, but it's revealed that Death's Head pulled pins on a grenade and blows himself and BJ up. The game ends with BJ crawling to see the Resistance escape and informing Fergus that it's safe to launch the nuclear bomb to destroy Death's Head's compound.
A mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning. And her name, Mother of Exiles. Come here, you're tired, you're bored, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore. Send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed, to me. Glasgow, do you read? Am I clear to fire?
You're clear.
The game starts with a cutscene detailing everything that just happened, but we don't need to watch it as I've spent the last 21 minutes and 4 seconds explaining. The actual game begins where it ended. BJ is saved by the gang and is once again saved against impossible odds. During this time, BJ gets flashbacks to his upbringing and how his parents treated him. His mum with care and love, and his dad with physical violence and demeaning verbal abuse, which is every kid's dream. BJ wakes up to find his legs don't work anymore, but he got a sick new scar on his face. He then scripts his way through the U-boat, killing Nazis. BJ then finds Anya, who is now pregnant, and they witness the Alzheimer, this thing, has got a hold of their U-boat. Caroline and Fergus get captured. Knowing the only way to get them back alive in the current state he is in, BJ turns himself in. He is then brought face to face with Irene Engel.
You think your hero, William Joseph Blazkowicz, Caroline Becker, leader of the Chryso Circle, the criminal mastermind. Never give up, Blazkowicz. Never give in to these people. I think not. I think you're just another...
Jesus Christ! Fuck me!
Überwacht den Meister! Look at this! How strange! One moment she was there, and now she's gone. Were these eyes ever filled with a lover's gaze? Do you think? Kiss, kiss, kiss? Das ist nicht komisch. Oh, willst du auch ein Küsschen, wie du es in deinem Tagebuch geschrieben hast? Auf deine dicken, fetten Wangen? Oder vielleicht lieber hier unten, ha? Bringt ihn her. Also an old friend of yours?
I'll kill you.
Au!
Bitte hör auf, es reicht!
Aus dem Weg! Ja. Nein!
Let's go! Get up!
And after that perfect introduction to your main enemy, Fergus gets his arm sliced off and you suit up in the power suit. Then, with the help of Sigrund Engel, you locate and free the Eva's hammer, which is the U-boat. BJ then fights his way back to Fergus and Sigrund with Carolyn's body. They escape via a conveniently placed escape pod. They then find out, with the help of Sigrund, that someone inside the U-boat was giving away the location of where they were, and that was how Engel found them. BJ finds a secret area of the U-boat filled with Nazis. Down there you can find books and pages written by Nazis going crazy, as they have been hiding down there for the past 5 months, since the U-boat was borrowed by BJ in the New Order. Once the Commandant was killed, the U-boat was now safe. The gang then decided to go to New York, or well, what's left of it, after a nuclear bomb destroyed it. I'll be breezing over the locations in this game as I go more in depth about the level designs later. The plan is to meet the leaders of the New York resistance in the Empire State Building. BJ fights his way through the wasteland and the underground train tunnels until he finds them. BJ meets Super Spesh and Grace. During this time, Grace informs BJ of the horrors she saw when the atomic bomb was dropped. Unfortunately, during this time, the Nazis ended up finding them and are about to launch an attack on the base. But how did they find them, you might be thinking? It's not like a walking one-man army killed tens and tens of them and the bodies led them straight to the Empire State Building, right? BJ holds off against the Nazis and helps get the resistance out of New York. They set up base in the U-boat. Grace then learns of a nuclear warhead on the Eva's hammer and asks BJ to get it. He travels down to Section F in the boat, secures the nuke, and they plan to launch it once BJ is back. Grace then tells BJ her plan. Super Spesh has a tunnel which leads to a massive Daryushud compound, which they gave the US to try and help them win the war, but since the Nazis won, they've since taken it over. They plan to have BJ place the nuclear warhead in the Oberkommando and cripple the high-ranking Nazi leadership. BJ heads to Roswell and is able to hide in plain sight, but if you go close to some civilians, they say this.
Buy a newspaper? I got today's news for you right here, mister. Only one Reichsmark. Say, mister, you look familiar to me. Are you some kind of celebrity? Mister, you... God. If you are who I think you are, I just want you to know I am behind you all the way.
BJ meets Spesh, but before they can do anything...
Mein Gott. Oh my God, das bist du. Das bist du! Blazkowicz, shut the fucking front door!
Once that's sorted, BJ and Spesh head into the basement where Spesh informs BJ about his conspiracies, and BJ shuts him up by telling him he has a nuke.
Space aliens, how the fuck do you know? Are you some kind of expert on all things extraterrestrial now? Look, I've been a lawyer a long fucking time, and I know a motherfucking conspiracy when I see one. No, okay, I'm not saying it's space aliens, right? But it goes without saying it's fucking space aliens!
So, I got a nuke in this here fire extinguisher.
Okay.
Cool it. I did not mean to rile you.
Spesh then helps BJ enter the tunnel, and BJ comes across a massive train tunnel system and has to fight his way to the controls, pimp slap a Nazi, and board the train. BJ makes his way to the front of the train, and once off the train, heads towards the Oberkommando. He boards a platform, but BJ isn't waiting, and we speedrun up the rails. BJ makes it to the main reactor and places the nuke inside, runs to the observation deck, but witnesses the leadership of the Oberkommando leaving Roswell in rockets. BJ steals a type of bike and leaves the area, and then detonates the nuke. As Roswell is near Texas, which is the birthplace of BJ, he travels back to his old house, and while there, has flashbacks of a girl he came to like, but his father heavily disapproved of because of the colour of her skin. BJ then enters his parents' room to find his father. His father explains how much of a disgrace BJ has become, stains the Blazkowicz name, and then BJ asks about his mother.
Where is she?
She's gone.
When? What happened?
What happened is we had a big goddamn war, and now we got a new government with new rules. They took her. They rounded up all the Jews and the coloreds and the... This is a white man's world now. White man's got to keep it Christian.
You sold her out.
So what? Wife made a living bemoaning me and raised a boy into a murderer. Well, I always saw you for what you are. 10 pounds of shit in a 5-pound bag. On your knees.
Daddy, I'm your son.
Down on your fucking knees.
Was a time I was scared of you. Was a time I'd have pissed myself, had a gun pointed at my head. You know what I feel right now? Not a goddamn thing. Who'd you call?
I heard everything.
Who in the hell'd you call?
The house gets picked up by the Alzheimer and does his best to remove the grip the Alzheimer has. BJ succeeds but enters into freefall.
Why did I come here? I should have run home. To you, Anya.
BJ is found and captured by Engel. Later, BJ is then met by Spesh acting as his lawyer, and informs that the gang has a plan for his escape. Unfortunately, Engel knew of this and kills Spesh, but luckily the others escape. BJ is then taken to trial where he is sentenced to death, but BJ breaks out of his restraints and fights back, killing everyone in the room.
Terrorism, including nuclear, both domestic and abroad. And high treason. For gruesome murders that number in the thousands, you have been found guilty, Mr. William Joseph Blazkowicz. It is rare, even for a man of my job description, to come face to face with true evil. And it pains me that the maximum sentence that I can bestow upon you is something as trivial as death! Death, Mr. Blazkowicz! Nothing but swift, sheer death! Bailiff!
He then escapes into a room where he finds his mother. Turns out this is all in his head, and he wakes to find his sentencing was real. He has, indeed, been sentenced to death. BJ is then taken to the Lincoln Memorial, where he meets Engel.
diesem Schwerverbrecher und ehemaligen Terroristenanführer die Gerechtigkeit erfahren, die er seinen unzähligen Opfern verwehrte. Unser ruhmvolles Reich wird nicht ruhen, ehe der Krieg gewonnen ist! Sieg heil! Sieg heil! Sieg heil!
We would have been so good together. Darling, you're breaking my heart.
The old and the weak are doomed.
And that's it. Thanks for watching. Wait, why do I still have 4 more pages? And oh my god, that's a long time left. Turns out the gang has a plan to capture and preserve your head. Out of the zombie rant I had before, the head thing is something I can look past. They have a scientist to help create space weapons and advanced technology, so this is okay in my books. They store BJ's head in a jar, and then you get to pick one of 3 upgrades, which I find weird as you can find the other 2 in levels when you replay them anyway. BJ wakes up to find himself in another body, and not a minute of peace later, Grace has a plan to meet up with the New Orleans resistance group, led by a giga chat of a man named Horton. BJ heads to New York to get the New Orleans dossier. Once obtained, BJ heads to meet Horton. After a couple of fights here and there, BJ finally meets Horton. Then, to allow Horton's group to make it to the U-boat safely, BJ rides a Panzerhund, which he uses to literally burn away Nazi parasites. The U-boat beaches itself in order to help Horton's group board, and Engel's Alzheimer is incoming, so they plan to launch a nuke, which, with the shockwave, will push the U-boat out to sea. As they are a smart bunch of individuals, they decide to do it. Horton then reveals his plan to take the Alzheimer down, stop it from dismantling resistances from the air. But to do so, they need to get the Odin codes. Turns out it's on Venus, and there's no way he's going to get there. But, lucky for him, they are hosting auditions for a movie detailing the horrors BJ inflicted upon the Nazi Reich, which, funny enough, is being hosted on Venus. BJ takes the identity of an actor and arrives on Venus. BJ meets Helene, the director of the film. BJ enters the rehearsal and has to learn his lines to the scene. Hitler arrives to inspect the actors, kills one of them.
I'm from Arizona.
And BJ is forced to rehearse the lines at gunpoint.
A cold-blooded terrorist. That is what you are.
What the hell did I write?
And you are a Nazi whore.
Then, the fight scene occurs where BJ has to face off against a soldier. But before you do that... And then it's BJ's turn.
Is that what you wanted? Is that what you had in mind? You Nazi assholes. Because that's all you're getting.
Wunderbar, wunderbar. Haben Sie das gesehen, Helene? Wie geboren für die Rolle. Er wird mein Platz gewinnen. Oh Gott!
Turns out Hitler loves the performance of BJ so much that BJ becomes BJ. BBJ? BJ? Yeah. After that, BJ heads to the surface of Venus to find the Oberkommando, now located on this planet since he, you know, blew up the last one. Once obtained, BJ just leaves the planet and returns to the U-boat. Then, after a fill of fetch quest, BJ and Anya attack the Alzheimer. They fight their way through to 3 terminals, input the shutdown codes into the defense system, and after taking out all 3 of them, they locate the command system which is on the bridge. BJ heads up to the top of the ship. After what feels like 3 boss fights, BJ finally reaches the command bridge and the gang arrive, who must have just taken the stairs. They then realize that Engel is on the Jimmy Kaya show. The gang head to the ground. They take over the TV studio, and then this happens.
This needs to happen up close. For you, Caroline.
Yes! 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 People of America, I promise you this. If the...
What the hell?
You're dead! I suffer you from your shoulders! I killed you!
Is that the best you got? Then your best won't do. You're my world now. These are our words.
The game ends with the death of Engel, violent and gory, just like her legacy. Just after this, BJ proposes to Anya, which is every girl's dream, right next to a mutilated corpse of someone. Yep, not done yet. We've finally reached Youngblood. The story begins 20 years after the end of Colossus. Most of the world is now liberated from the Nazis, and BJ and Anya have raised their 2 daughters. BJ then just disappears one day, and Grace makes a return as being the head of the FBI. Would have been nice to see that in a cool cutscene or something. So yeah, BJ is gone and the girls take it upon themselves to find him. Oh yeah, and they also get help from Abby, who's Grace's daughter. Yeah, her. They steal some power suits and the game begins. It takes place in France, but only like 5 sections of France we explore. But Surely the campaign is more like the other games, and it has this unique feeling, and they aren't just the same level throughout, but slightly different between them. The girls meet up with the French resistance and are tasked with taking out 3 brothers, which are giant robots, which guard keys to Lab X, which is where BJ is apparently. Oh yeah, this game uses RPG elements, so that's something. Quickly away from this story, the game actually lets you choose your character and the suit you wear and the weapons you start with, which I honestly think is very nice. The levels are beautiful, the ray tracing legit makes me cream, and I will say, the last 2 hours of the game I played was decent, but it wasn't worth the previous 6. Back to the story. After taking out the 3 brothers, the girls get betrayed by some French chick called Juju, who is the leader of the resistance or whatever, and her secret boyfriend, which turns out to be the main bad guy. Didn't see that coming. I didn't mention them before because they're just filler and they didn't do anything to the story other than being an obvious betrayal. The girls then get access to Lab X, which, you know, if the bad guys knew that, which they did, they could have just changed the keys, but no. This game sucks. Anyway, the girls get into Lab X, fight and find BJ, who explains to the girls that after he killed Hitler, oh yeah, BJ did it, we just didn't get to see it, or anything. Nope, just, oh I killed Hitler. That's fine. BJ explains that Hitler has a doomsday device which was triggered after he dies, and BJ has spent his life trying to stop it. The girls get an upgrade, which is my favourite part of the game by the way, to their suits, from tech that BJ has. They then find and kill Lothar, that's his name by the way, in a very difficult boss fight. The game then ends with the girls sitting on something and looking at France on fire, and saying how if the Nazis attack, they will fight back. The end.
Berlin will come down hard on the city.
We'll be here waiting for him.
Good. Meantime, you sisters up for a job?
Shoot.
Steal as much of Lothar and Juju's technology as you can. Make us ready for what's to come. What's that? You know, the apocalypse.
Hey, gotcha.
If the Nazis will take to the skies, then so shall we. Because there's no way we're going to let those assholes win.
No, there is not. Rain is coming, girls.
I kid you not, that is the story of the Youngblood. That is what the game is. Introduce girls, France, get keys, betrayal, track him down, game over. That is the game. I'm gonna rant. It's such a shame to see the series end with this. This is the final game that has been released, and there is no news of any new ones on the way. This is beyond disappointing. I want to make one thing clear though. This isn't because the cast is all females that I hate this game. I'm all for strong female protagonists, but this game isn't it. The girls are so annoying. The game doesn't care how you feel. You have to listen to them complain and compliment each other and just say some cringe shit. But there is a plus side where you can skip the god-awful elevator cutscenes, which is a +1 from me. Like I said before, the game makes sure you know that BJ kills Hitler, and no cutscene or gameplay is shown of it, which I found very disappointing. Even that Hitler Machine Games timeline on fandom legitimately says sometime during some during some time here BJ ends up killing Hitler. Like, that's just pathetic. He also makes a reference to different dimensions, which I found to be another thing layered into this story to try and keep the 3 remaining brain cells I have engaged in this game. These games before were brutal and filled with bullets, blood, and death, and this one is no exception. But the girls aren't as strong as BJ and they can't kill like him. You can also fully customize the weapons, which I liked. Now we get onto the RPG elements. They just don't work. They feel so unbalanced, and this game should be a fun time, not speak to NPC 1, get mission, enter location, complete mission, get XP, level up, return to NPC, and repeat until you get a high enough level to get to the boss fights. You have to do that 3 times. You have to do side quests, level up, go to the 3 different brothers, fight your way through. You have to do that 3 times. And the gamer makes sure that you can't just go to the brothers instantly, because you have to go here, get something from the other district, go back to that district, go in and see the brother, and the levels are ridiculous. I ended up not doing many of the filler side quests and just headed straight to the brothers. And the game didn't like that. The bosses are a couple levels above you, and those levels mean a shit more damage they do to you. I really like the old game's way to handling bosses. You do the same damage as you always do, and they just have either a weak point you need to hit or are just really heavily armored. I am against bullet sponges, and this game's enemies are the definition of bullet sponges. Or you just do what I do and abuse the OP throwing knives, and that at least makes this game's traversal a bit better. I am sorry for the rant. This game really has its positives, but the negatives outweigh them tenfold. I played this game so you don't have to. The Wolfenstein games use a lot of fast-paced content with fast running, crouch sliding to match with the type of game it is. Like I mentioned way before, the game shares similar gameplay aspects to the Doom franchise, the reboots, with you needing to move fast and shoot from point to point, fast-paced action and not stand still. And the heavy metal that plays sure resembles the games. The game also features really good stealth mechanics with some satisfying takedowns, but it also shows the absolute stupid AI who will walk past another guard and then just see them dead on the ground, not think twice about it. So I would say that's a bit of a flaw, but it really does show how dumb the Nazis are. During stealth, there's basically another objective to every stealth encounter, which is the officers who have a radio frequency which you need to kill, because if you're spotted, the alarm will be raised and more guards will spawn. The guns are always satisfying to use, and the ability to be able to dual wield them is always fun. In the Old Blood and the New Order, you can only dual wield the same weapon, while on the new Colossus and Youngblood, you can use any weapon with any weapon. They also have a secondary fire on each weapon, such as a suppressor on the pistol or a burst fire rate. This allows you to play your way and have fun using these weapons during combat. There are also perks in this game, but in order to unlock them, you need to complete a certain in-game challenge, such as dual wield kills, kill behind cover, combat takedowns, etc. These perks will help you survive the game when it gets difficult and allows you to have more fun while playing. The level design is very interesting to explore, with usually having more than one way to progress through the levels, and that shows during the stealth levels, with it having vents to crawl through. The levels have a lot of attention to detail. If you look at the walls, there is usually Nazi propaganda, there are notes scattered around the level, and they add some extra lore into the game with having you read about some characters or location to understand it more. There is also a heap of Easter eggs throughout every game. I'll just detail some from the Old Blood, which I found. You can find a Skyrim helmet, beds which allow you to play old Wolfenstein 3D levels with modern weapons. A grammar Nazi.
Have you taken your German lessons?
Oh, yes, sir.
Good. You, how do you say thank you in German?
Oh, of course, sir. Let me see. It's,
Yes?
Dank.
Yes, out with it.
Dank.
My God. Was that all right? No, that was terrible. You're butchering my beautiful language. It's Danke schön, verdammt. Say it.
Danke schön?
Incorrect. Danke schön.
Danke schön?
I've heard enough. No more.
I'm so sorry, sir. I'm still practicing.
And so much more. The levels in the Old Blood and the New Order seem familiar because it's very concrete based. Castle Wolfenstein and most levels in the New Order are just massive concrete jungles. But the new Colossus shows some impressive levels with it taking place in the United States, and of course with the help of the new engine. And one of the standout levels for me is the Roswell level. You travel to Roswell, New Mexico, and it really shows how society has changed after the Nazi rule. The starting area is bright and colourful. The level is based around the celebration of when the US surrendered to the Nazis, titled Victory Day. Another level when you travel to is the destroyed city of New York, which in this story was destroyed by an atomic bomb which ended World War II. This level is fun to explore, but when you understand the game's lore and take a second to understand why the city is the way it is, in ruins, it's a very dark and depressing place to be. You see corpses all over the level, and in the underground sections you can find a shelter made by survivors, but ultimately they didn't survive due to the radiation. Some levels are based off actual designs for Germany if the Axis won. This game uses the idea of Germania, which redesigned Berlin in the Nazis' vision. There is also a lot of use of space technology in this universe, as the Nazis have expanded to the moon and later in the games, Venus. You can also see the plans for Venus in the New Order's last level. Very nice touch. These games allow you to explore a future which is completely different to the one we live in right now, and brutally kill Nazis with no second thoughts. These games will always be fun and enjoyable to play, aside from you. But each game offers a Nazi killing experience like no other game offers. The Easter eggs are funny to find, the levels are absolutely beautiful and it's always fun exploring them, secrets hide around every corner, the combat is fun, engaging, sometimes brutal but always satisfying. The characters are iconic and the games are outright fun, but often forgotten as they were held in harsher lights compared to the Call of Duty franchise, Battlefield franchise, and other FPS titles. These games brought a new audience to the Nazi killing table with the reboots, and this game offers something unique and fun and should be enjoyed. These 3 games have been fun for me to replay and I enjoyed them. Thanks for watching. I just want to say thank you so much for all the love and support I've been getting from the Hitman video. I loved editing it, and I know this video was supposed to be Detroit Become Human, but the script I was writing, the video I was creating, it just wasn't what I wanted it to be. So I thought while I'm working on that one, I'll give you this video so then you've got at least something to see before I release the Detroit Become Human video. But I just want to say thank you again for all the support, the lovely comments. I love waking up and seeing comments on like the videos saying you're doing a good job. I just want to say thank you so much for all of that, all the support. And I know it's really lame to call it out, but I just want to say thank you so much for surpassing 200 subscribers. This is just something I love doing in my free time, and I just want to say thank you so much. That was long. I do want to apologize for the delay in making this video. I was writing a script and playing the games, but COVID hit me and I wasn't able to record for 10 days because I was in the 10-day isolation, so that wasn't very fun. Like I said at the start, thank you so much for all the support and the massive goal of hitting 200 subscribers. I know everyone says it, but I never thought I'd get here, so I just want to say thank you so much. I hope this video was good. Like I said, I love playing through these games. Youngblood was really a big disappointment, but you know, nothing's perfect. So, thank you so much. I really want to get my Detroit Become Human video going. It's just not the way I want it to be. It's a real shame because I loved playing through that game. And yeah, thank you so much. I hope you're doing well, and I'll see you in the next one, which is hopefully Detroit Become Human. That's what I want. That's the one that needs to be done. And yeah, thank you for it. Thank you for watching.